2014, writer-director Damien Chazelle took audiences backstage into the dark, psychological battlefield of New York's elite jazz music scene. Whiplash follows a first-year drummer Andrew Naiman,
19 years old, isn't he cute?
Played by Miles Teller, from his humble start in a practice room right through to a meteoric fall, all in pursuit of absolute greatness. The majority of the film takes place in the fictional Schaefer Conservatory, a simulacrum of Juilliard and other elite arts colleges in the United States. One of the most engaging elements of the film, besides its deep characterization of ideas such as legacy,
I think being the greatest musician of the 20th century is anybody's idea of success.
discipline, and mental fortitude, is the film's central force of antagonism, Terrence Fletcher, the band leader of Schaefer's studio band.
It's the best in the country.
The role of Fletcher, as played by Oscar winner J.K. Simmons, is a complex construction of ideals and principles
I was there to push people beyond what's expected of them.
that manifest a style of teaching rife with abusive language,
I didn't know they allowed retards into Schaefer.
actions, and trauma
1, 2, 3, 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference!
in the pursuit of true greatness within the art form. While the prevailing read of the text suggests that Fletcher is an outright villain, displaying abhorrent behavior towards his students with zero remorse, the true read of the text that I hope to highlight reveals a highly nuanced character that not only represents a rarely researched pedagogy, but exhibits inherent dramatic functions from each of Hollywood writing veteran Christopher Vogler's archetypes. Therefore, let me take you on a journey as we examine the full range of archetypes embodied by the character of Terrence Fletcher, and discuss the validity of his teaching methods as they relate to the goals of the protagonist, a teaching method coined by educational philosopher Yulia Delia Popa as the Whiplash pedagogy. In quick summation, let's look at Vogler's archetypes and how Fletcher is used to represent each of them. The most obvious archetype would be that of mentor.
You know who I am?
First and foremost, he is a teacher at Schaefer. However, the mentor should also be represented as a gift giver. Yet as Vogler says, this might be as simple as a key piece of advice.
Double time swing.
And the protagonist should always be trying to earn the gift.
No, double time.
Andrew must take on the advice of what is needed, and then he must practice in order to stand out.
Drums with me. No, other drums.
Vogler states that at each key gateway is a guardian, set to challenge the protagonist. This may not always be the central villain or antagonist, but can be a minion or lieutenant. In the case of Whiplash, Andrew's fellow drummers could be seen as threshold guardians, obstacles put in his way by Fletcher to test him. However, the inciting incident in this film is a mini-test, and in actuality, like this scene, many of the key gateway moments in the film occur with Fletcher himself framed in literal thresholds. This scene is incredibly constructed in that Fletcher also acts as herald.
So you know I'm looking for players.
In relation to Fletcher as villain, Vogler states that at times the herald can be the villain, or agents thereof. The shapeshifter impacts the hero by challenging their sense of what is real, and the hero is forced to question the motivations of the shapeshifter.
You're here for a reason. You believe that, right?
If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will fuck you like a pig.
Fletcher is easily read as a monster, yet Vogler says the shadow as antagonist is bent on the destruction of the protagonist, and this is where Fletcher deviates. He is in fact purely concerned with the success of the protagonist.
I actually fucking tried, and that's more than most people ever do. And I will never apologize for how I tried.
However, Vogler does state, a dangerous type of villain is the right man, a person so convinced his cause is just he will stop at nothing to achieve it. Fletcher also fulfills the role of trickster and ally. By Vogler's definition, trickster's dramatic function is for comic relief.
And I am not going to have my reputation in that department tarnished by a bunch of fucking limp dick, sour note, flattered on their girlfriend's flexible tempo dipshits. Got it?
And really, Fletcher is our only source of this amongst the dark and torturous journey of the film.
I can play it, okay?
Said not now!
However, a full archetypal read of Fletcher would have us examine Linda Aronson's mentor antagonist. They are distinctly challenging for the protagonist, and oftentimes remarkably more interesting, but for these reasons we rarely see the world from their shoes, hence also fulfilling the shapeshifter paradigm. But the fallen mentor is a similarly appropriate moniker for Fletcher, in that they are generally mentors on their own hero's journey, facing their own thresholds, sometimes of aging or death. Fletcher himself is bent on finding his own Charlie Parker, and because of the outcome of the film, both Naiman and Fletcher achieve their ultimate goals. In this way, Fletcher can be read not as villain, but hero, who completes his own journey in tandem with Naiman. But this does then call into question his teaching methods. The aforementioned Whiplash pedagogy comes from Popper's analysis of Fletcher and his methods.
I'm upset! You are a worthless, friendless, faggot-lipped little piece of shit.
Popper, seeking to vindicate Fletcher, using the writing of other academics, ultimately has the film's adrenaline-filled conclusion to support her argument. Hero wants goal and achieves it. A reductive summary of the hero's journey, but self-evident in Fletcher's own success.
But is there a line? You know, maybe you go too far and you discourage the next Charlie Parker from...
No, man, no. Because the next Charlie Parker would never be discouraged.
Socrates, in conversation with Theaetetus, likens himself to midwife, yet instead of helping mothers give birth to babies, he helps students give birth to ideas. Much like the midwife, he can bring upon the relief from labor or induce the pains of labor, or rather, the pains of learning. R.V. Mintz expands upon this pedagogy further in their thesis, as they seek to examine the value of pain in education. But where most applicable to Fletcher's belief is the continuation of the proverb, whereby Socrates leaves Theaetetus with the idea that even if his labours bear no fruit, he is barren, his ideas are left to die, then Theaetetus will at least be left with the elimination of false beliefs, being a far more modest student to his peers. Popper reinforces that Fletcher never mentions talent in the entire film. He doesn't seek out students like Connolly who exhibit confidence, but students who barely scrape by but exhibit the drive to be put through the pains of learning, to be better students. If we return to Vogler and the archetype of hero, he describes the hero as someone who is willing to sacrifice their own needs on behalf of others.
Did you quit?
Not exactly.
Is this Naaman, who rejects his family, his girlfriend, and at even one point his dreams?
Truth is, I don't think people understood what it was I was doing at Schaefer.
Or is this Fletcher?
I believe that is an absolute necessity. Otherwise, we're depriving the world of the next Louis Armstrong, the next Charlie Parker.
The hero should be the one who takes decisive action, risking the most or taking action with the most responsibility. Fletcher is consistently putting his name and career on the line to push other students and Naaman beyond their capabilities. Who do we think stole the folder?
The folder is your fucking responsibility, Tanner.
Does Andrew take decisive action, or is he actually only reactive to the constant push from Fletcher?
I can.
And Vogler's last dramatic function for the hero is the hero should be willing to give up the most, even their own life on behalf of an ideal. They should face death or the symbolic death. Fletcher loses his job for his ideals, unwilling to apologize, and even at the JVC Jazz Festival is prepared to have a drummer in the band ruin an entire performance for the sake of his beliefs. Does Naaman actively sacrifice anything in that moment? Or does Fletcher, in fact, brazenly sacrifice his last shred of credibility to see Naaman emerge from his own death? It is not that we should see Naaman as not a protagonist. We are clearly viewing the story from his point of view, but by Vogler's own definitions, supported by pedagogical analysis, perhaps Fletcher is in fact not a villain, but a hero.
There are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job.